Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Celtic Way YouTube channel. My name is Ryan McGinlay at the Ryan McGinlay on the X handle. Tonight, I'm delighted to be joined by Anthony Haggerty, A Haggerty 10, on the X handle. Tony, how are you doing this evening?
I'm very well. Just seems like a never-ending kind of hamster wheel we're on now. We just keep turning up and talking about.
We've got to react to some of the news. Thank you to everybody that joins us. And could I just firstly say before we talk about the press conferences today, thank you very much to MPH Group as always for sponsoring our videos. I will just get the wee notes up. That shows you how prepared I am for this. 2 wee seconds. So these videos, as always, they're brought to you by MPH Group, which are Scotland's award-winning family-run all-trade specialists covering all of mainland Scotland. Every service you opt for automatically enters you into MPH's incredible holiday giveaway. You could win a 7-night stay at the luxurious 5-star Moon Palace Resort in Cancun, Mexico. Visit their Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, their websites, and their contact number in the description below. If you are looking for plumbing, heating, kitchens, or bathroom work, then look no further than MPH Group. And we thank them for sponsoring our video today, or two of our videos today, rather. Tony, we've been busy today writing, transcribing the Celtic press conferences, both from Paulo Bernardo and Brendan Rodgers. Where do you want to start? Do you think we should start with the manager and his developments?
Yeah, we'll start with the manager. He had a lot to say today, didn't he? So
yeah, it was a very informative, as always, with Brendan Rodgers in terms of a press conference. You know, you're always going to get that good information from him. He'll like to keep you guessing, but at the same time, he'll give you plenty of information to work with. I think one of the first things to talk about, you know, we were worried about how long Reo Hatate was going to be out injured for, and it seems that it's going to be quite a long time, at least until after Christmas. That's the prognosis. He didn't give an exact date. He wasn't 100% sure on how long Reo Hatate was going to be out for, but it looks as if it's going to be at least until after Christmas. We did hear that rumour this morning that was going to be the case, and now that's came to fruition. So I just want your instant thoughts on those developments.
I think in terms of the player, Reo Hatate, it's a crushing blow, isn't it, moving forward for Celtic? Everybody thinks very highly of him, and I know he's your favourite player at the club. You think he's the best midfielder there.
I think he's the best midfielder in Scotland on his day.
Yeah. Matt O'Reilly might have something to say about that at this minute in time, but you know, so yeah, I think it's for Celtic, it's bad news, but from misfortune comes fortune for somebody else, doesn't it? And that's when you are looking to that kind of depth of squad and options that you have in your midfield area, you're in your room. So Paulo Bernardo's had a chance, Tomoki Iwata's had a chance, Odin Thiago Holmes had some minutes, fleeting. David Turnbull's had a chance. So there's 4 players right away. One of them is going to have to grab that opportunity, aren't they? Grasp the nettle and take the mantle on and be the player that Reo Hatate is, offer that dynamism in the midfield. And I'm quite confident that it'll be one of either Odin Thiago Holmes, Paulo Bernardo or Tomoki Iwata. I think there's enough quality there, Ryan, for them to fill that void and that gap that's created by Hatate. And Celtic will get by. They will limp by until Christmas, or until after Christmas, until he comes back. But I'm quite confident that per anyone from those 3 that I mentioned, Turnbull, I'm not so sure about, because I know he got some minutes on Saturday, but still not entirely convinced about David Turnbull. But Rodgers seems to like him, and give him minutes every now and again. So we shall see. But the one I'm more intrigued about was Thiago Holmes, and he mentioned him today, didn't he?
I'm glad because we mentioned him this morning. We wanted a question to be asked regarding Odin Thiago Holmes, because he is an exciting player. You know, fleeting performances so far, fleeting appearances, but at the same time, he looks like a player that can is maybe best placed to replace Reo Hatate, the guy in the middle of the park. He seems to have a bit about him, a bit of dig, a bit of bite as well. We've seen the good and bad side of that, you could say, in terms of his red card. But yeah, I think he's a really exciting player, and he's one player that could step into that hole that Reo Hatate has made in the midfield.
Thought he was excellent at Ibrox when he came on. Odin Thiago Holmes played really well, and then blotted his copybook with his moment of madness in Rotterdam. But he's been out injured kind of since. But the manager made a point of mentioning him, so you can read into these things what you want, but I think because he's mentioned him coming back from injury, he's going to get some minutes on Wednesday against St Mirren. I don't think he'll risk him coming straight back into the side from injury. And then Paulo Bernardo was the player that was put up, so he kind of work in the premise that if he's the guy that's put up at the presser, then he might be playing. So people hate the words presser, don't they? So press conference, then he might start. So, as I say, people read a lot into these things, so that could be the case. But you've also got Tomoki Iwata, who did very well at Tynecastle, scored his first goal, who could deputise it and do a job. But the one I'm intrigued most to see is Odin Thiago home, because like you, I think there's a footballer in there. I think there's somebody who could step up to that challenge and go in there. And if he channels everything in the right way, you could have a player on your hands. And I think Roger sees that as well, because that was he wasn't asked about Odin Thiago home. He was asked about Reo Hatate, but he made a point of mentioning that and bringing that up, didn't he? So I like to connect dots and stuff like that, Ryan, join dots and connect lines and all that. So I'm thinking maybe the manager's saying, just preparing you for a wee bit of Odin Thiago home time on Wednesday, maybe after the hour mark or something like that. Put one for half an hour. You'd like to think so?
Yeah, just reading the comments that he'd made, he says, we also have Dave Turnbull and Odin who can come into that position as well. The opportunities are there and will be there for players both in training and in the games, and it's just about taking these opportunities. It's not the first time that he's mentioned both training and real life scenarios or real game scenarios. It shows that the training is just as important for him. It's
what they always say,
two
Ryan,
have to go hand in hand. That's the best time.
I always say that.
And Paulo Bernardo, I know
the manager watches these guys in training. I always say it. I've always said that he watches them every day, and a lot of his thoughts and team selections are based on what the guys are showing him at training. Why wouldn't it? But I think Brendan Rodgers, more than most, is a studier of players at training, and so you it's that whole thing that I remember saying ages ago about when Bill Shankly said the moment you walk into Liverpool, you're getting watched or being scrutinised. I think Brendan Rodgers is doing that to every player at every training session. They're being watched, they're being scrutinised, and if they don't think they are, then they're sadly mistaken. So they have to bring their A game, and that A game determines whether you feature in the match day squad or not. Also determines whether you play from the start or not. So it's a big, big thing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to go on to talk about some further comments he made about Paulo Bernardo and Odin Thiago home as well. So the question that was asked him was, you've worked with a lot of young players and brought them through your career. Are these two midfielders with a lot of potential who can reach the top level? What do you think? He responded saying, it's all potential at the moment. When you want to be a top player, the number one factor is having the mental strength to get there. The talent will take you to a certain point, but it's the mentality to improve and develop your game that is important. Both of these guys, in the short time I've seen them, look like they want to develop. So it seems as if they've got the right attitude to make a difference. And I think those two players will be key starting on Wednesday night. The two have got to soften that blow of losing Hatate. Hatate is a massive, massive loss to this team. The guile, I always talk about the guile when it comes to Hatate, the agility. We'll get on to talking about how Brendan Rodgers and his staff can limit the amount of injuries that Hatate has, because I think there's some interesting comments later on in the press conference. But it's all about how Bernardo and Home soften that blow. And if they can do it 50-50 between them, then there shouldn't be any problems.
There was almost a kind of Bond villain with Brendan Rodgers stroking the cat there, wasn't it? Saying these two guys, it's potential, but just wait till I get my claws into them and I'll take them where they want to go. And he was sitting there kind of smiling, thinking, I'll turn these guys into footballers. I'll turn that potential into something more tangible. And that's the vibe that I got there, that he is watching these guys at training. He's purring at what he sees at training, and it's now translating that and that kind of application and attitude and effort and training into matches. And one of them's going to get their chance, if not two of them, because there's a plethora of matches coming up and there's a gaping hole in that midfield to the victor of the spoils. It's up for grabs. And as I said to you, Ryan, last week, I want the two of them to be rattling the manager's door. Why am I not playing? Why am I? I should be playing. Here's the reason, X, Y, Z. And then Brendan Rodgers has got, real managerial dilemma then, hasn't he? Or a selection dilemma, selection headache. But that's what you want. That's the decisions you want to be making. Where Odin, Thiago Home and Bernardo and the Wata are bringing their A game, and it's per many 1 from 3, and the manager's like, okay, this game it's you, this game it's you, and that's what I want. I want the three of them to be really going at it hell for leather to say, I'm the man to take us forward. The same way that Matt O'Reilly took Celtic forward and Callum McGregor was out for a spell, and he reverted to that more defensive midfield position, and he deputised excellently well. So I want one of those guys to come in and really grasp the nettle here and take Celtic forward and be that dynamic, creative player for Celtic with a bit of guile, a bit of craft, a bit of dig, all of the above.
Yeah, I think the big story from this press conference for sure is regarding Reo Hatate. You know, there's easily about 4 or 5 questions that are tailored towards talking about Hatate. I think that goes to show you how important a player he is to Brendan Rodgers Celtic, not just Celtic as a whole, but Brendan Rodgers Celtic. He was saying that that's one of his top players. He's certainly one of the top players in the team. You know, from a guy that I didn't really know where his future was at the start of the season. I was like, is he going to get a game over Turnbull? You know, the cream always rises to the top, doesn't it? But he was struggling to get in before that performance against the Aberdeen, and then he got injured. You know, that's been the story of Reo Hatate's season. Just going into talking more about his comments, I want to actually go straight into the comments that he's made regarding the investigation that he's going to have to go through in order to keep Hatate fit. So he was asked earlier on today, saying, I know you said last week you were hoping to get to the bottom of it, which is Hatate's injury, because of the hamstring injury in his other leg towards the end of last season. So when he comes back, he's in the best possible position to keep going long term. So that was the question. The answer is that's the ideal scenario. It's just investigating everything that he's doing outside of here as well as here and piecing it all together. There are also just unfortunately players that sadly their collagen means that they pick up lots of injuries and they can never stay fit. He's a guy that came into the game late. He's done fantastic when he's been fit and available here for Celtic. I think it's just a case of trying to look deeper into everything around his development and what he's doing here and away from here to see if there's anything we can find out, because ideally you want your best players available, and he's certainly one of our top players. Do you think this is, Tony, maybe a nod back to the amount of work that Hatate does off the field when it comes to maybe his conditioning as well? You know, there's a lot of talk about Reo Hatate being in the gym a lot. Do you think maybe that's down to he's pushing himself far too much? You know, 90 minutes is quite strenuous, and then he's doing more off the pitch in terms of the gym, trying to make himself the best possible player he can be. But do you think he's maybe doing too much work off the pitch that's not encouraging injuries, but making himself more susceptible to injuries? That'd be what you would say.
Well, the previous manager said he's never stopped. He never, excuse me, says he's never stopped wanting to learn in all aspects and areas of his game. So you can also say he's clearly doing that in training as well. How can he train better? How can he make himself fitter? How can he be the finished article? Because bearing in mind he's trying to cram in all of this in a very short space of time that he's been playing top level football. And your body takes some time to adjust to playing top level football, Ryan. You know, he's quantum leapt in terms of his progression. He's gone from university football to playing top flight football to playing Champions League, all within the space of 18 months, 2 years, something like that. So that's like a meteoric rise, isn't it? And
I think he's only had 3-4 years, and I think he made his first appearance. I think he made his first appearance in 2019 or 2020. I may be wrong, but I think it's one of those 2 years. So, but that's very, very late for a player to make his competitive debut at the age of 22, because he's 26 next month.
It's a rapid rise, isn't it, to where he's got to. You know, he's not came through an academy system and then, you know, been at a club and get used to how the first team train and all that kind of thing. So he's really only had 3 or 4 years of playing top flight football, which is what I'm saying. And I think that's what the manager's alluding to there. And they're going to see, in terms of the sports science, it's there now. You have to utilise that and get to the bottom of it to see if there is any niggles, underlying issues, because that's twice he's broken down this season, isn't it? We broke down at Pataudry, came back, looked the part, and he's broken down again. So I think Celtic are first and foremost want to see why it's recurring, and there might well be some underlying issues that the medical team have not detected yet, but they're certainly going to try and do everything they can to detect it now moving forward. And if he's out to after Christmas and that's a prognosis, so be it. The one thing, and we always stress about players when they come back, we said about Cameron Carter-Vickers too, they're out for as long as they're out. But once they come back, they have to be 100%. You can't take any unnecessary risk with these guys, and especially a player with as talented as Reo Hatate. You have to make sure that you do get to the bottom of any underlying medical issues, body issues, or sports science issues. That's what it's there for. So we have to utilise that, and especially in terms of this footballer, because I think he'll be frustrated himself. You saw him when he went down. He was sick, wasn't he? He was just like, not again, type thing. And I think players, you've got a duty of care and protection to players as well. Save them from themselves sometimes. And I know it's disappointing that after 7 minutes he was off injured, but if that can stop him from being injured in the future, then you're helping prolong his career rather than the stop-start nature of his season so far. And you don't wish that on MD.
No, absolutely not. I think one of the popular sayings is skipping leg day. I think he needs to skip a couple of leg days and just allow leg day to be match day, basically, for him, or his training. And sometimes some players need specific training regimes or training programs in order to get the best out of them. I think one of the most famous examples, especially recently, is with Callum Wilson under Eddie Howe. And I know I mentioned Eddie Howe in a Celtic podcast. That's terrible. Flashbacks to 2021 there. But he doesn't, if Newcastle are playing at the weekend, he doesn't train until like a Wednesday or a Thursday because his body just can't handle it, because he picks up so many tissue injuries. So individual injuries are important. That is true. That is completely true.
I'm laughing because I remember a few years ago, and I was at Broadwood for a Clyde match, and Alan Kernigan put himself in the team when he was player manager. On the Saturday, he hadn't trained all week, and he told everybody, me being flippant as usual, and I said, "Oh yeah, you were working on the Paul McGrath regime, were you then? Don't train all week, but then have a blinder on the Saturday." And I said, I don't know what was going through my head, and I just said, "But that's where the similarities end, Alan. Paul McGrath was a player." I said, "I'll leave that in your inbox." And he turned to me and he said, "How many £1 million moves did you make in your career, son?" And I just went, touche. It's just like, fair enough. Oh, it was a great comeback. Absolutely brilliant. And,
I thought you had beef with Callum Wilson or something. I was like, when did you two meet?
It's just that kind of, you don't train, but then you can play on a Saturday thing. I mean, Callum Wilson, as you say, is a kind of modern day equivalent, but the one that always strikes to me when growing up was Paul McGrath was always kind of favourite for that, and he would say, "Oh, he would train. His limbs hurted. He was, he looked as if he couldn't run, let alone, and then he would go out and play an absolute stormer, stuff like that." So there are players that can get by doing that, other players can't, and I think with Reo that kind of striving for perfection, in every footballing sense, training regimes, on the park, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you don't know if you're overexerting yourself in the gym. I guess Celtic will get to the bottom of it for the player himself as well, because he'll want to know, because that's that thirst for knowledge, isn't it? He'll be saying, "What am I doing wrong?" to the sports science people, and they'll be saying, "Well, you're out for a while now. We'll give you the best of care and best of treatment." That's the thing now. So they've got all this, and all the information's available to them, isn't it? Because I was quite surprised that happened to Hatate again. I've got to be honest. So soon after, he came off the park at Pataudry. So, and you don't want it to become a recurring thing, not with a player like that. So I think Celtic are wise to just sort of say, right, don't know when he'll come back. We'll pencil it in for some point after Christmas, but if it's longer, so be it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare for the midfield, to be honest. Especially, it maybe be easier news to take after a good win, but it just seems as if the negative result of the weekend mixed with that negativity of Celtic losing one of their best midfielders is, you know, it's a bit of a 1-2 punch that the club could have done without, to be honest.
And
Why don't we go on to talking about a player that can play in the midfield up until Christmas and after? Oh, sorry.
I was just about to say, for the record, I've never had a £1 million move in my career ever either. So there you go. He was right.
Fair enough. So you've got to be. You've got at least he was right in what he was saying. You know.
Correct.
So Brendan Rodgers wasn't the only person that was interviewed today by the press. There was also Paulo Bernardo, who was just coming off his first start for Celtic against Hibs. You know, I say it's his first start. It felt like his second start because with the amount of time that he played against Atletico Madrid, it was a start and everything but technicality, because he came on as a sub after 5 minutes for Reo Hatate. It basically was a full game, you know, 85 minutes. And that was probably the reason. It was the reason why he was brought off after about 56, 57 minutes, because his body wasn't ready for those two exertions in a short period of time. What did you make of this press conference? Because I've got to be honest, I quite enjoyed it and enjoyed listening to his viewpoints on the game. I was particularly interested in his comments regarding Portuguese football. He stuck his homeland in the deep end a wee bit there.
I think so. It's full of divers, basically, didn't he? And play actors and guys who just throw themselves to the floor. And he quite liked the hustle and bustle of Scottish football and the fact that they actually play. You know, they don't. As he said, the players go to the ground, didn't he? He said more often than not, the referee has to constantly stop the game. But what I do admire about these guys is, Ryan, that I don't think I could go to Portugal and hold a press conference in Portuguese at Benfica, Sporting Lisbon, or Porto. Yet these guys come and they sit down, and the first thing he said was, "Sorry if my English isn't all that good," but he was fine. He came across as a really humble guy, and you know, and a happy guy. He seemed to be happy in his environment. He said he liked the tactics of the manager as well, and I think that's a hard thing to do, to take someone from their homeland. You know, Benfica would have been, you know, in that academy, and they're seen as the next big thing, and comparisons are coming thick and fast, and he would have got the whole Jota experience as well, you know, saying, you know, he was asked about, did you speak to Jota? He said, yeah, I spoke to Jota, and what did he tell you? And the thing is, his experience is going to be totally different from Jota's. They're two different people, two different players, so you can say to them, oh, this is good and that's good, but they have to experience it for themselves, you know, and he's not the new Jota, he is Paulo Bernardo, and I think he enjoyed the fact that he's played the last two games. Then he said he wanted to play more, didn't he? Which I also like. And then he was asked about his ambitions and aims, and he says, I want to win the league and the Scottish Cup and do well in Europe. So he was just ticking all the boxes, wasn't he?
I'll do.
Yeah, correct. And if he does all of them, then I think the Celtic supporters will be very, very chuffed with him and delighted. And what happens, hopefully, if that's the case, then Celtic might exercise that clause to buy him in the same way that they did with Jota. That's the hope, isn't it? That, you know, he now gets that chance and opportunity to show what he can do. And, you know, I think he showed at the highest level he can compete and be a player against Atletico Madrid. You know, and to play at that level, at that high intensity, you know, that it wasn't any surprise that he came off. But Brendan Rodgers said that after the Hibs game in his press conference, he said that was always the intention, to give him an hour, but they had to take him off after like 55, 56 minutes because he was just absolutely spent.
And look at that game time. So he got 85 minutes against Atletico Madrid. It's not just 85 minutes against a run-in-the-mill team. It's against one of the best teams in the world. You know, 44 pressures. That's one of those numbers that's going to stick in my head.
Yeah.
So 44 pressures, 85 minutes of play. Then he had 50, 56, 57. I seem to remember the clock saying.
But showed you what he put into the Atletico Madrid game, Ryan, right? And this is a guy that more or less came in from the cold for that game, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying, okay, what's he got? And my goodness, those stats were incredible. Celtic stats on the night were incredible, and he was a big, massive part of that. So he you know, it's the physical and mental side of that as well. The match fitness side, spoke about that the other day, about being fit and match fit. You know, so he's getting used to everything, getting used to Celtic style, the way they play, his teammates. You know, so that I big up to him for stepping up to the plate that night against Atletico, because it's so easy to hide. It's so easy for just to make excuses and say, you know, the tempo of the game it just passed me by. He made sure it didn't pass him by. You know, so he got involved, and And Saturday he showed a lot. He did a lot of nice things as well, but he was just knackered, wasn't he? Basically, and but you seen enough to suggest that. Yep, get this guy really fit. He looks comfortable on the ball, and he's got some skills in his locker, and So I was impressed enough, Ryan, impressed enough to think there's a player there, and I think Brendan Rodgers can drag that out of you. But when he sat down and he spoke today, I was chuffed to see him speak. Yeah, good to hear their thoughts and what they're thinking and how they can help moving forward. But he's desperate to play, isn't he?
Yeah, and he'll certainly get game time. Him and Odin Thiago home, you would hope the two of them fighting it out for that one spot. Just I'm just having a wee look at some of the quotes that he said. So, that they are shorter quotes because English isn't his first language, and you would expect that. But I like that his first comment was saying sorry about his English, and then he goes on to speak perfectly fluent English. I love that from him. Much like his namesake down south, and Bernardo Silva, you would say. I'm guessing that the education system in Portugal does teach English because there seems to be a lot more Portuguese players coming to Britain and speaking really, really fluent stuff. So all the best to them for that. So he was asked about Reo Hatate being injured. Do you feel ready to play a lot of games now? Do you feel like you will improve these games? His response was, I think so, because we can work hard on training, and it's training that gave me the opportunity to play in the games, and the same for the other players too. The game time, I think, is the most important time for a player, because when we play one game, I think we improve a lot more than one or two training sessions. I think so. So he's another player that's taking training very seriously. I'd like to be a fly on the wall or a fly in the sky of the training at that point, because
it's clear the
it seems
manager
like it's a
puts
very
emphasis on
competitive
it.
place.
Clearly, the manager puts a lot of emphasis on training. He's clearly told the guys, you impress me on here. You're putting yourself in that, on that list. Come Saturday, Sunday, whenever they're playing. So be on that list. Bring your A game. No days off in terms of training. No slack days. You have to be at it. And I quite like that. So he's clearly somebody who's listening to what the manager's saying, the messages that imparting are getting through. And I'm delighted the fact that he has got that grasp of English, because then there'll be no communication barriers on the field. He'll understand, won't he, when his teammates are shouting at him, and if he doesn't understand, then he'll be able to communicate with them anyway. So, because you know what Scottish players are like, they speak slang, they speak also, if Callum gives them a kind of man on shout or something,
That's what Ange Postecoglou was saying. The Japanese players were learning English, and then they have to learn Scottish as well. It's like learning two languages. I remember he said that either last season or the season before.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of caveats to that. So, but no, I was delighted to see him, and as I say, we do read anything into the fact that he was put up for the press conference. Does that suggest that he's going to play for the third game in a row, or start? Well, he didn't start against, but he's going to play a prominent part for the third game in a row. Is that your thinking behind that? Do you think the manager will do that, or as someone in the comments earlier said, doing all that, mention Odin Thiago home, and then he'll just produce Tomoki Iwata in the starting lineup, something like that. Keep everybody guessing. That wouldn't surprise me if he did that either.
No, I know, but I think it will be Paulo Bernardo, especially if he's had a 4-day break. That even though it is a quick turnaround, it's still 4 days. They should be ready, and they're playing at home. They shouldn't need any motivation to come into the game and put on a show for the supporters coming. It's the first time they've played at home in the league for a wee while now, so they'll be well up for that. And especially Paulo Bernardo, first start at home potentially. That's an opportunity for him to really.
Could have scored on Saturday, Paulo Bernardo.
He probably should have scored as well. Yeah,
it was sure it got away from him a wee bit, didn't it? And
it's one of those ones where I think he could have made an even bigger impact if he was coming off the bench. Unfortunately, due to Hatate's injury, he was thrust in to play both games essentially from the start. And I think he would have made a bigger impact at Easter Road if he was coming off the bench, maybe against tired legs. Whereas he was probably tired coming into that game, played the 57 minutes and then came off. Just having a wee look at some other comments that he's made. Just your usual comments about the weather. I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming for about 2 minutes before it was said. I think he was desperate to say it. He says the weather's okay. He's
Diplomatic, I
experienced it
think.
before. Yeah, very, very diplomatic. He's also talking about his friend Jota. I knew that Jota was going to get mentioned in this at some point, and he was saying Jota was telling Bernardo when he was making the move. He said he told me that the city was good, and I think that too. He told me about Celtic, that it was a really good and big club, like we're used to in Benfica, a really big club too. He told me that it's not too different. I think the thing that is different is the weather. I'm really enjoying Glasgow, like Jota said I would. Yes, we are friends. I speak to him a lot of times, but now I have to make my own history here, and hopefully it's good, just like his was. Yeah, I was quite glad that he didn't want to discuss Jota too much. I think he only spoke about Jota because he was directly mentioned.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to be compared to Jota. He doesn't want to be the next Jota. I know they don't play in the same position, but you're going to get that similarity because they're both coming from Benfica and Portugal. He doesn't want to be the next Jota. He wants to be the first Bernardo, and I like that attitude.
And also as well, Ryan, he doesn't want that pressure because Jota left a hero to the Celtic supporters. This guy's like, listen, I'm not him. You know, I came from the same academy, the same team. I will give my all, but I am me. I'll create my own history, and I'm determined to make an impact for you. That means playing more games. I want to play more games, and I'm aiming to win you the title and the cup. I mean, you can't get any fairer than that, can you? I mean, I think is a box ticking exercise in terms of telling supporters what they want to hear, and in terms of your own personal thoughts on the move. I think that's great. Brilliant. All you have to do is back that up now. But I mean, Jota, every Celtic supporter loved Jota, didn't they? They were heartbroken when he left. So, and he left for a mind-blowing sum of money, and there's still talk that he might come back in January, and everybody's trying to keep a tin lid on that. So, whatever happens in terms of Jota, but he's gone. He's not there anymore. Paulo Bernardo's here, and we await to see what he can bring to the table. What we've seen so far has been good, and we just hope he's going to bring more to the party. There's lots of background noise here, Ryan. I don't know. Are you hearing that?
I can't hear any, unless it's coming from your end. What sort of noise is it? Sorry.
I don't know. It's like musical or something. Music, but I don't actually know.
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe a spectre or something. I don't know what's happening with that. It's something that I'll sort. I don't know if it's coming from my end. If you can't hear it, then it's probably coming from my end. If that's the case, then apologies if anybody can hear that. Yeah, I think that's everything with regards to the press conferences today. Yeah. It was a pretty much a generic one from Paulo Bernardo, but at the same time, it was interesting to hear his thoughts on how things are going. It makes him more personable as well, I would say, because he's just joined the club, and by putting him in front of the media, then you learn more about him.
Yeah, I admire their bravery to do that, Ryan. I really do, because it's not an easy task. Even simple questions can become difficult when it's not your first language, it's not your go-to language. So I big up to any foreign player that comes in and conducts themselves in that manner, and and speaks English and sits in front of the media, because as you say, and as Ange Postecoglou says as well, and media guys talk a Scottish English, don't they? So we might have had difficulties even understanding the questions. That's no slight on them. It's just your natural way you speak. I'm sure if he sat in front of me and I asked him a question, he'd be the first one to say, "Sorry, can you repeat it?" or something like that. Because I've had that before with foreign players, and I always laughed at that. And I don't have a hassle or a problem with that. As I say, I always applaud any foreign footballer who comes in and conducts a press conference in English in front of the Scottish media guys when it's not their native tongue. So good on them, and you do learn more about them, and I think that's what Celtic supporters want. He's played a couple of games now on the spin, so get a wee handle on his personality too. And I don't think he's done himself any harm at all, because I think he come across a humble, kind of straight-laced kind of guy, and just wants to be a success at Celtic, and here's hoping that he is.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed for Paulo Bernardo and Brendan Rodgers that they both get the 3 points on on Wednesday. The reason why we came to do this show, as well as reacting to the press conferences, is because we won't be able to do a morning briefing as such tomorrow. We've got other business to attend to tomorrow morning, so if we do go live, it'll be later on in the day with regard to the briefing. It might be an afternoon briefing, actually. I need to change the title to an afternoon briefing instead of morning briefing, but we will endeavour to try and bring you something later on in the day, I reckon. So thank you everybody that's joined us. I know it was pretty much last minute talking or getting this set up and out, but thank you to everybody that's joined us. As always, we'd like to thank MPH Group for sponsoring all the videos that we do. For any of your plumbing, heating, kitchens or bathroom work, please visit mph.group. If you sign up and get some work done, then you get entered into a draw to potentially win a 7-night stay at the Moon Palace Resort in Cancun, Mexico. That every service you opt for enters you into an incredible holiday giveaway, which is that if you go to all of their socials in the description, then you'll be able to find out more about MPH Group. We really do appreciate them sponsoring the podcast. Furthermore, if you could have a wee look at the bottom of the screen, we cannot continue to do these free videos, both morning briefings, afternoon briefings when they come, and press conference reactions without your help. £4 for 4 months of the best Celtic journalism you can get on the internet, or £18 for a full year's content. And if you do that, then you'll be supporting top quality football journalism covering the club you love at www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. On there is Q&As today from Bernardo, from Brendan Rodgers. There is stats pieces from Alan Morrison. There's stats bomb pieces from myself. There's a scouting piece going out tomorrow regarding Celtic's summer signings and how they've got on so far. It's a bit of a riveting read, but maybe not for the best reasons. There's a few players that haven't hit the heights that maybe they would have been expecting at the start of the season, but that's certainly something to look out for. That'll be live on the site around about 6 o'clock tomorrow, so keep your eyes peeled for that on social media, and there'll be plenty more where that came from as well. We'll have instant analysis on Wednesday following the game. We'll have a morning briefing on Wednesday as well. So if you can, and you've got the spare money, £4 for 4 months on the Celtic Way website, or £18 for a year, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Once again, we can't do this without you. Please subscribe to the website and please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We really do appreciate all your support. Tony, thank you for joining me twice today, both in the morning and in the evening. It's been a pleasure talking about Celtic. Thank you to everybody for joining us. We'll be back at some point tomorrow to discuss the game against St Mirren as we look ahead to that, and maybe talk a bit more about some of the manager's comments and any of the news that comes out in the next 24 hours. But until then, thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you at some point tomorrow. Have a very good evening.